We have returned for action from the top of the leaderboards, so let's waste no time in getting into it, as we have got the Muslim versus Give You Anxiety in a mirror match up on Highview. I know, I can already hear people reading in the comments, oh, mirror matchups are so boring. It's just two guys doing the same thing, and one of them maybe making a mistake along the way. Yes, that can be true, but I think the interesting part is actually, one, that actually teaches you how to optimize civs more than anything else, I think. And two, I'm always looking for those games where there's deviation, right? Where they do something they've never done before, where they spin it around and they come out with a new portrayal of the civ. And we have been seeing that with the French recently. In the last few days, in fact, we have seen a lot of players, for example, engage with man-at-arms, which before Christmas would have been considered taboo. Yeah, it really was considered that bad, right? It was always, why would I get a stupid idiot with armor and the sword when I can get a smarter idiot with an armor, sword, and a horse? And it was very hard to argue with that logic. But, of course, players looking for that kind of bang-for-buck value, that slow-moving army, they switched it up. Especially makes sense when you consider things like arbaletiers in the mix. So we're just seeing that kind of dynamic at play, right? When you think about how the meta has slightly moved away from dynamic cavalry-based units, right, towards this slow kind of methodical siege engine, right? It makes sense that you want to compartmentalize that alongside the arbaletiers, the man-at-arms, these other slow, methodical troops, and just try to play the range advantage off the back of Mangonels alone. So I'm kind of excited to see that. I'm also excited to see if we are going to get a Night Rush versus a TC Boom, because I think those two strategies are still two of the strongest available to the French. We have also seen a lot more French players deviate from that feudal age rush timing, and in fact, maybe max out at 3 Knights, possibly 4 before just rushing into Castle Age before ramping up that aggression. Opening-wise, we are seeing fairly similar, right? Except looks like G-Way has opted for just 2 people in the gold versus the Muslims 3. So the Muslims should be able to crack a quicker tech-up timing slightly. We should see that in a second. I think they both did stick on 1 scout, which is surprising here. I don't know if this is because it's a mirror-mirror matchup, or the nature of the map with not much to aim for. But obviously we've seen a lot of civs go for the 2 scouts. I think part of this might just be their uncertainty about playing into pro scouts, possibly. But after you get this kind of reconnaissance on where the deers are located, I don't think you're going to neglect pro scouts, right? The way we do see some players neglect pro scouts is when the deer line is close to a secondary resource deposit, and then they could justify moving over, right? It's either it's close to your TC, and then you move out naturally with a bunch of people in a mill, or say it's here where the stone and the wood is, then your other option in that situation would be to go, okay, I'm just going to drop a TC here and get the trip value. But this generation, quite even in terms of the lack of desirability around dropping a TC. I think there might be better value for GUA by a bit, actually, considering he's got gold, trees, and deer, so maybe we see that. But definitely not from the Muslim, where he's just got stone and deer here. It might just seem a bit wonky for him. Actually, GUA got a lot of things in his favor. Look at the amount of woodlines he's got. This is so easily defensible as well. Look, the gold vein's protected. Wow. Okay, yeah, the more I look at this map, the more I can see is definitely in favor of GUA. So we'll just have to see if he's identified this, if we'll find a way to use it as well. He hasn't fully reconnaissanced around his opponent's base yet. And I expect both of them to be going School of Cavalry and probably building 1 or 2 scouts just for the additional vision, if not to play into pro scouts. And you can usually spot if a player's going to go pro scouts, and there's the sign we're looking for. GUA already dropping the mill, tells us everything we need to know. Meanwhile, the Muslim is not doing anything comparative, right? He hasn't put down a mill right next to base. He hasn't slapped one out, but here he goes, on the move. And he needs to get them to build. Oh, no, he hasn't got the wood. I think he's going to be slightly off timing now because he didn't have that wood drop off. But we'll see. I think mill, actually, no, it might line up perfectly. So you don't want to build the mill, like optimally you want to have it coming the same time as the completion of a landmark. So you start churning out the scouts and you're already starting to research into the pro scouts. Remember, it does take a decent amount of time at the minute 15 mark, as we can see there, courtesy of being the French. It's also more affordable. Remember, they get that 30% discount on economy-based researches. So usually this would cost you it would be 75 wood and 275 gold. Wow, Pigeon, you're really good at maths. No, I've just looked at that sign and seen the numbers way too often. I definitely didn't add 30% onto that. You think I do proper maths? No, I've rambled about Pro Scouts so many times at this point that I think I'm going crazy. I think most of the players are going crazy. I definitely know there's a few players who have taken a break from the game just because they are sick and tired of Pro Scouts being meta. Yeah, I said that in the most nerdy way possible. There we go. First, it'll be a Knight out to match what's coming. He understands he has to mirror GUA's potential aggression, and considering GUA did get up into the feudal first, it makes sense that he's probably got a Knight out already. And you already see the scouts eyeballing up in position around the base, just trying to keep an eye on things and also prep to pick up the deer when ready. In the meantime, Knight, nice sniping there. Okay, that's going to be a freebie. There's no way you can now run him down. So GUA, he probably shouldn't have got that one villager, but the Muslim, not able to actually pull it back quick enough, gets punished. And, oh my god, GUA, no. Wow, the Muslim neglected to actually chase him. So he's going to go back in and do the same again? Can he actually get it, though? He's looking to club onto the weakened villager, and that strikes down a second. Moves away from the TC again, gets hit by the Knight. But he might get a third one here, guys. He already injured one over here. You can see how low this one is, down at 31 health. So if he lances in, it'll be 2 health, because obviously he hit for 29, and then 1 strike afterwards, it's gone. That's kind of the absurdity of Knights, by the way. I think that is kind of the funky part is, remember that Royal Knights, they get the bonus damage for 3 seconds off the charge, right? Which means they get juiced up high enough that with a lance plus a strike of their sword, they do what other Knights would take 3 hits to do, right? It's why they're so much better than Rus early Knights. Rus early Knights, the kind of benefit you're meant to have is your economy is stronger in certain ways in regards to the economical advantage of the Golden Gate, and also when you consider, you know, the fact you're able to get hunting cameras down to generate gold. That's meant to be the logic behind it, but obviously at this very early stage in the game, there is no match for the Royal Knight. Look at this, GUA going very defensive. Has already dropped the double racks, is get the spears out. I like this. If you're going to be forced to do the racks drop, do 2, don't do 1. You get too few spears out, and you just get punished by Knights for it. So in this situation, he might be able to cover his angles quick enough, but for now, the Muslim charging in, looks for the strike. It's looks a bit wonky there. Does get 1 villager in the end, and will back away in time. A little bit frustrating in return for GUA after he done the Muslim the same favor, so they are even on the Villi count at the moment. The Muslim has no intent of actually walling himself in the same. Look what he's doing. He sees the double racks drop. He understands the only thing you get out of that is spears into a castle, so he's going to drop an archery range of his own. And this could be where GUA has to really hunker down. He might have to wall further. This palisade at the side is nice. You're going to probably have to double it down on the other side. Try and funnel into a choke point so that your opponent's Knights can't run rampant in your economy. And here you go. The Muslim, he gets the news his opponent has gone to Pro Scouts. The Muslim himself has got Pro Scouts as well, so he's already dropping the carcasses. I believe it's 2 scouts to the 3, if I'm not mistaken. There definitely was more scouts for GUA. Though I could be wrong. I thought I saw a 3rd. Yeah, I did. It's just AFK. So yeah, that means that GUA should be getting the majority of this. The Muslim, it's kind of surprising they've both stopped on the scout production. The Muslim slows down his push-out scouts to actually get chivalry first. Meanwhile, for GUA just seems to be a little bit food cap right now because of how many spearmen he pushed out. He has got an ample defense force at this stage, but remember, it's still static, which is why I think, like, if you think investment logic, paying for all these spears versus paying for, say, 8 and then walling off the other parts, you can see how it's more beneficial to just palisade because it's going to give a long-term defense, an easily holdable point against these early raids, and also it's something that you can repair, right? Like, this is the, what, 14th century, probably before that? In the Dark Age feudal, 14th century feudal. So we're in the 14th century. Now, I don't think they came up with, like, implants, robotics, or anything like that, so there's no way we can cyborg these troops to heal their injuries. We do eventually get into witchcraft when you get into the Castle Age, and your weird little priests come out that somehow wave their hands and make everything better. Makes you wonder what drug they're sprinkling over the troops, but the point is that any damage done is going to be perma, right? And also, you're up against Chivalry Knights, so over time, they're going to negate the damage you've done to them. And then Archers are going to make sure you never do damage to them, because you can never reach them. So the Muslim is going to get the bad news. The Muslim right now is kind of on a timer because of his choices here. So he's got less in the scouts at the moment. I think he's evening it up. He has got double archery range. He's looking for a stronger timing, trying to, like, plow in very quickly. The problem for GUA, like, I'm in support of this concept if you go for a secondary TC. But if there's no secondary TC, it doesn't make sense. And look who's the one building a secondary TC. The Muslim, currently gathering up the stone. So everything that GUA is doing right now feels very kind of static and hunker down and just kind of the rest of the world's problems are their problems, right? Whereas the Muslim is understanding that he has an ability to scale and also pressure in the mid game because his opponent hasn't transitioned again. He is now in the back of his base as we see the stables getting dropped. But how are you going to long-term support this off of 1 TC versus your opponent's 2? Also, keep in mind that he still only has 3 scouts, right? He didn't ramp it up further. Meanwhile, I'm pretty sure DeMuslim, yeah, he's up to 4. So he understands the importance of this. It's a race, and it's a race that GUA is going to end up losing because he's not investing enough into scouts early on. He's definitely investing way too much into spears. He's really investing too much in the spears. That is now 26 spearmen. Remember, guys, these are 60 food and 20 wood. He has to find value. The problem is his hand got revealed at the start. DeMuslim already knows what he's doing. So he's already been building archers, already up to 10. And that is close to enough to just run all the spearmen through. So this is going to backfire heavily for GUA. But GUA, at this point, because he doubled down on it, you're in for a penny and for a pound. You've kind of boxed yourself into a corner, and now you have to apply pressure before it's too late. Meanwhile, DeMuslim, oh, he sees, does he? He knows where GUA is going. This is really smartly done by DeMuslim. The spears can't run all the way out here, so he's just going to guard these deer so that the scouts can't collect them. And his scouts should run over soon. Meanwhile, look at the wrap coming in. And when the TC's being built, GUA might time this perfectly. DeMuslim in a bit of trouble. Needs to back away, pulls the villagers back, is still constructing the TC. He needs to think about this. Will he be able to complete it in time? If they raise this to the ground, it's going to be a big deal. The archers moved across now. Villagers are exposed. They are going to back off. That's going to force the spearmen away. The archers do too much damage. If he could burn this down, it would be big, though. He has to hard commit, and he might lose the army for it, though. And that might end up being a good value trade for DeMuslim. And GUA, it's too late. He's backing away, but he's already taken the damage. I think he killed maybe 1 villager here. He failed to prevent the construction. He lost half of his spearmen battalion. And the TC still goes up. This is the worst case scenario for GUA. That was almost perfect. He almost actually locked this game in. If he just stuns out and takes out that TC from DeMuslim at that stage, that's such a heavy investment, right? He's going to miss out on 700 resource effective. That is half of a tech up almost, right, at that stage. So to have lost that at this stage, also losing a few villages because they could have been sniped, DeMuslim would have been in a very precarious situation despite the fact he had archers out which counted the spears. Because it would have given GUA the space he needs to construct up, right? To either go for a castle age or transition to a new unit type. Now GUA's in trouble, and you can see it. You can see it in the way he's built. He's palisaded everything now. He's paranoid, and he should be. Because he just kind of threw away his opportunity to maybe take control of this game. And also he's starving. Look what's happening in the back of the base. He's having to resort to the berry bushes. Meanwhile, carcass count should still be, yeah, pretty decent for DeMuslim. Remember that DeMuslim has been sneaking more corpses. He can sneak even more if he wants to. He can drag these scouts across and pick up the carcasses, but at the moment, he's just guarding the entrance against GUA, bringing them back to base. As this scout, oh, he's going to be rinsed in a sec. They're not able to get close enough. They'll have to back away. It's a good guard by GUA. But this is really all he can do. He has to just react. He's like, get out, leave me alone. Every time, it's just kind of leave me alone and slapping of hands. And now the archer's in position. He can no longer protect the spearmen, and he cannot get any more of these carcasses in. He could build another gate on the other side, but he hasn't moved to do that just yet. And he has to be concerned with the center, where you can see DeMuslim, he's halfway through burning this palisade down. And he's already forced them off of the goal line, courtesy of the archer's position here. And this is the mistake that GUA made. He never got into the archers. He never teched up. He's now in a very dangerous situation. He could easily lose complete control of this game. Not that he really has much control at this point. Knights. Whoop, DeMuslim mismanages a bit. Going to lose several of them here. He needs to be careful. The Knights are on top of his archers now. He's trying to snipe out spears as he backs up, but he needs to get his Knights round onto GUAs. And that's the problem he's encountering here. So he drags across, engages them, splits them up. Still a few spearmen chasing him while the archers do fall back in the meantime. But the Knights are going to get on top of him. And behind him, he's dealing with a small contingent of spearmen, but they're hardened spearmen. So they last quite a while against the scouts and the Knights. And it looks like DeMuslim just lost his quality units. Archers are still being chased down. Really well played by GUA. He just understands that he has the numbers on the home field to just push out. And DeMuslim, he will get most of his archers back to base, but he does sacrifice a lot of Knights in the process. That was very costly. I wish we had like an eco trade calculator, right? After a battle, just seeing what the cost was, because I feel like it was double the cost for DeMuslim. DeMuslim can afford to lose more, remember? Now he has his second TC, but it still feels wonky to give up that much. Now archers snipe out a bunch of these troops. You can see GUA feels pressured, right? His army ran all the way over here. He doesn't want to be cutted back and sniped out by a bunch of archers. And also, he needs to get rid of the second TC. So he invests heavily into the dive. And it might cost him the Knight Battalion as a result. A few archers split off. They pull away a lot of troops. And now you can pick apart the remaining Knights. But the Knights, in the meantime, are running down a lot of these villies. These villagers that need to get back to work, the Muslim feels like he can't keep them garrisoned for too much longer. And now the eco count, just a 3-point difference in it because of these assaults non-stop from GUA. The Muslim needs to find a way to dent his opponent's economy, because while he will continue to outscale him if it is peaceful, the issue he has right now is he just trying to control the center, right? So this means that GUA has a lot of raiding potential, even with slow static units, because of the map design. Highview is designed with this in mind, right? When you think about a place like Lipany, Dry Arabia, there's a reason that cavalry dominates a lot of the meta there. It's because there's a lot of open ground, there's nowhere to hide, it's very easy to weave around, you can predictably see what's coming. When you talk about Highview, you're blind, right? Even with scouts, you do not have much vision. It's why outposts are so important. And it allows you to get so much closer to your opponent's base before they can react to what you're doing. And we'll have to see if GUA is able to utilize that, especially now that he's switching over to Horsemen. I do like the Horseman choice, by the way. It is a quality solution to everything you're up against. Spears and Horsemen, right? Just pokey sticks all around. Pokey sticks on horseback, pokey sticks on foot. Because that's all you need to counter out what Muslim is doing for the next few minutes, right? Because he's got knights and he's got archers. So you just break them off, you run them through. There's not enough knights for Muslim to hold a front line against a group of spearmen like that as well. We saw that in the last fight. So Muslim has a very wonky issue in the next few fights where he has to find a way of splitting the forces. And he done a decent job of it in the last engagement to minimize the losses on the archer line, but it still cost him that very expensive knight line. And he can't afford to keep doing that, even with the scalability of 2 TCs. Moving out here onto the deer, onto the berry bushes. Knights moving through, getting vision on what's happening. He sees the transfer over to Horsemen. Still with more Knights coming out for GUA as well. And he's stabilizing somewhat. Still only 1 CC though. So GUA doesn't really want this to go too much later. He either looks for a tech up or a way to siege base soon. And you can see Muslim, now it's his turn to feel uncomfortable. He drops the walls. He doesn't really have a say in this anymore. He understands that his opponent now counters everything he can produce at this stage. And transitioning to a new unit type would be very costly. And it would be better to be able to be in a situation where you could tech up instead. But the problem he has with teching up, as we're seeing here, is he has to sort out his food situation first. Which means he has to get ample and surplus wood so he'll be able to afford to tech up. And that means, you need to get these farms in position. It means you need plenty of people on the wood lines to begin with. That's why that's his split. Nobody on gold at all for Muslim. Has there been a blacksmith drop yet? Yes, there has. And we have got pretty much all the researchers. Iron Undermesh, of course, not needed on this side. And on the other side, yeah, you can see still arrow, of course, not needed for GUA. GUA did not get the melee resistance, but you don't need it in this situation. Spears counter the horse so hard, and also the horsemen aren't going to worry about melee against the archers. So overall, GUA has a more cost-effective research situation with his composition. It also doesn't involve the use of gold, which means as long as he scales his food count, which we can see he's doing a fantastic job of now, then he'll be safe to easily boom up because he's only pushing out a few knights now and then, right? He's not hardcore commit. I say that, he is up to 9 now, but he has, of course, tried to keep it composite, and it means that as a result of this, he's also slowed down production elsewhere. Notice the spearman count hasn't increased again, and the horseman count has stopped increasing. So he is pushing out a lot of knights, but because it's only knights, his economy is getting to a point where it can support this. The Muslim, well, he's had enough of sitting back. He understands he has to stop giving all this ground over. It just makes it too easy for his opponent to raid into his land. And this is cool to see. We said about this kind of switch up, right? Like, instead of it just being a critical mistake, it's 2 different kind of concepts to the game, right? With the archers to try and counter out everything, looking for the TC boom, and just being countered out by GUA's reluctance to allow that and just double downing on the feudal age. We'll see how it pays off. Spearman chasing through. Knights have to retreat. And that's a lot of knights coming for him. Muslim's going to realize he's outnumbered now. And he's going to lose a lot of archers on the retreat at this rate. Tries to back away. The problem is the horsemen alone will just run your archers through. And his knights are already splitting off from the archer battalion, sacrificing them essentially. He's just trying to get rid of as many of these spearmen as possible so he can re-engage with the knights. He's reaching home turf. Archers are trading out a decent amount of these spearmen. But there's still too many that clumped up here for the knights to engage. He needs to get it down to about 10, and then these knights can actually charge in. And now his villager lines are exposed as well. He can't keep forefooting ground. He's running out of places to run and hide here. Spearman split up from the knights. Big mistake there from GUA. He could lose a lot of troops here as he retreats away. Look, he's losing the spear line too quickly. And that's going to offer an opportunity now. Muslim charges in. He sees the weakness, and he looks to exploit it. Horsemen aren't really a big concern. Knight count, I think, is about even here. Actually, an advantage right now for Muslim on the home field. Makes sense as he's pushing out even more Knights. These spears trying to get across, but they are slow to reinforce. And after all that, Muslim, most of his archers are dead at this stage. He's losing the Knights too quickly. It looks like G-Way is going to be able to actually keep his army alive after this fight. Muslim not able to find the targets he's looking for. Even with the assist of the TC, it just seems irrelevant. So much resistance and health on these Royal Knights. And he will get through them in the end. The question is, what's left standing? And what's happening on the other side? G-Way, can he rebuild? Can he look to cap up? It looks like he actually hasn't got the resources to necessarily replace this army. Meanwhile, Muslim, with the scalability, with 1,000 gold in reserve, he can actually outscale GUA still. And this just spells problems. You can see GUA is desperate. The trickle in of unarmored troops under the TC shows you how on the ropes he is in this game. And after all that, the army gets massacred. The count now on the eco front. It's a 14 villager lead for Muslim. He actually guarded his villagers very well there. And it looked a little bit rough when he charged in the center. The numbers were on his side, but for a moment it looked like GUA was actually going to mincemeat him. But even though he gets on the archer line, he never truly addresses the Knights because he had that wonky split up where the aggro dragged away all the Knights to one side and it was spears plus 2 Knights chasing into the TC. That was the difference maker. That's where GUA lost his fight, and it might be where he lost this game. Because there's too many troops still alive, right? It's 5 Knights, 15 archers, and your economy sucks in comparison to the Muslims, and you know he continues to outscale you. So you have to keep pressuring. Now you're just stuck doing this. GUA, this Congo line of death is never going to end until he's dead, right? He doesn't have another choice. Because if he lets up for a second, he understands now that the Muslim will just tech up. And then the technological superiority there in a mirror matchup will just lose you the game. Right now, you're losing everything. And he just calls it. Understandable why as well. Really good idea by GUA to double down in the feudal, but I don't think he had any follow-through. My biggest issue with the way GUA played this is he done a good job pressuring back towards the Muslim's base, but there was no investment in siege engineering. There was no surplus wood. There was no way to kind of transition into a siege force that would get you inside. And I think that's what made the difference, and that's kind of what cost him the game. GUA had a good plan to start aggression. He had no plan to finish it, though, right? And really well played on the patience from Muslim. Muslim sacrifices the arm to save the body, right? He loses a small group of archers on the retreat. Notice every time the starter step, sniping out the spearmen, making sure that if he's going to lose a few troops, he's going to get rid of the one thing that's stopping him from turning a battle. And by the time you get to the base, GUA had done a good job of keeping enough spearmen on the front line to keep the pressure on. The problem is, A, as we said, no siege engineering, so no battering rams coming out to ramp up that pressure. And B, it seemed like he allowed auto-attack to dictate that fight. You might notice around the stable, there was a pull away by about 80% of the Knights to chase after one red Knight. And that basically cost him the composition that was going to tank the TC. If you had them in position with the Spearmen and the TC is firing onto the Knights, those Spearmen last another minute, minute and a half. The numbers are good. You run through the Archer army, and then you still have spears in reserve to deal the Knights that the Muslims fielding. Because he didn't do that, he loses the game, and it shows you, once again, just the small things, guys, the things you forget about. When you go back to your base to cycle through your economy, that's the type of thing you overlook, right? You're like, I attack, click, I'm going to look away for a moment, and when you look back, you go, I parked my Knights here. Where, did someone steal them? Well, no, they just stole the game from you in that case, GUA. A good attempt, but really well played by Muslim. Understood the limits of his Civ in that matchup. Also understood what he could get away with and didn't go ultra greedy. Notice he never invested in the Castle Age. And that's the difference, guys. Not only looking for those small mistakes that are going to happen even to the best players in the world, but also not making the big mistake yourself of just being too greedy, which we've seen so many players fall victim to recently. And I've got to say, just a quick shout out, by the way, I've been loving these games recently because we are shifting again. Have you guys noticed yet? Castle Age isn't appearing as frequently as it did before. The Castle Age rush isn't entirely dead, but people are seeking out alternatives, and they are yielding great results. So take note of this and go try it in your own pub games. Thanks for watching.